The atomic bomb's shattering impact on mankind in 1945 led Robert J. Oppenheimer to refuse to take part in making the hydrogen bomb, which ultimately led to the ruin of his reputation in the public eye. Oppenheimer was one of the most influential scientists of the 20th century because of his orchestration of the Manhattan Project, which pushed the limits of science by creating the most frightening power the world had ever known, the atomic bomb.
As Oppenheimer witnessed the devastating effects of his atomic bomb, through both the testing and the use of the weapon to end fighting between the United States and Japan during the Second World War, he resolved to no longer work in atomic energy. Oppenheimer took a stand against the United States and the world as a whole because he displayed resilience in the face of the strong current of national expectations by believing in his morals and refusing to take part in what he saw to be a stepping stone for the mutually assured destruction of the human race.
World War II erupted into chaos in 1939. The Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan fought for 6 years against the Allies, comprised of France, Great Britain, the United States, the Soviet Union, and to a lesser extent, China. Ultimately, 40 to 50 million soldiers would come to die during this war, making it the largest and bloodiest battle to ever rock the world. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, gave the green light for a weapon of mass destruction to be developed.
Has also been attacked and considerable damage done. This battle has been going on for nearly 3 hours. One of the bombs dropped within 50 feet of CPU Tower. It is no joke, it is a real war.
In 1942, the U.S. government began work on the secret project, managed by Brigadier General Leslie Groves and undertaken by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, that was directed at creating nuclear technology that the Germans were rumored to have been developing and would cost around $2 billion.
Intelligence operatives, chemists, engineers, thousands of workers, and leading physicists, such as Albert Einstein, Leo Szilard, and Enrico Fermi, were brought together to 4 major sites, the most notorious being a laboratory in Los Alamos, Mexico.
The Manhattan Project, as it would come to be called, was led by J. Robert Oppenheimer and would soon develop the theoretical knowledge behind the infamous atomic bomb, a weapon of mass destruction capable of releasing energy equivalent to 22 kilotons of TNT in an instant and leveling entire cities.
The first atomic bombs, dropped by the United States on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, deeply affected earth, water, air, and all living organisms within a vast area. In an unparalleled display of power, the bombs created fireballs with radii of 150 yards and a peak heat close to that of the center of the sun, vaporizing entire structures and people while sowing radioactive poisoning in human and animal tissue, as well as water supplies.
While the creation and consequent dropping of the atomic bomb thus affected the course of World War II and was one of the main factors that led to Japanese surrender, J. Robert Oppenheimer grappled with what the atomic bomb meant for the world.
Even though it brought some good and prosperity to the many American and European soldiers who would no longer have to toil in brutal conflict, the development of the atomic bomb meant the dawning of a nuclear age that would propel the world into an era of cataclysmic terror and international disunity.
General Leslie Groves chose J. Robert Oppenheimer as the lead scientist and researcher of the Los Alamos Project, but many people had their doubts about his choice. Oppenheimer was well known as a brilliant scientist, but he had no previous experience in managing research teams and was notoriously difficult to work with.
He struggled to communicate with people who did not operate on his same level of intelligence. From the beginning, Oppenheimer had a rough relationship with his superiors in Washington, D.C. and the military. As a patriot, Oppenheimer willingly developed the atomic bomb for the United States military, but upon seeing its devastating effect after the Trinity bomb test, he quoted Shiva from the Bhagavad Gita and said, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
This was the start of Oppenheimer's realization that he could no longer support a weapon that had the potential to kill millions of people. In a letter to his former mentor Max Born, he said, "I have felt a certain disapproval on your part for much of what I have done. This has always seemed to me quite natural, for it is a sentiment I share."
While some argued that the atomic bomb brought about peace and helped to save the lives of those who were engaged in the Second World War, and would act as a form of deterrence for future wars, Oppenheimer saw the invention for what it really was.
He knew that the bomb meant a shift in the scientific community towards inventions that would wreak havoc on society and would exponentially increase the risk of nuclear confrontation that could lead to the deaths of all.
Oppenheimer became more vocal of his disapproval of the atomic bomb. This became evident in his stand against the United States government when officials came to him, asking him once again to join a research and development team in order to create a new and even more devastating weapon, the hydrogen bomb. With the onset of the nuclear arms race, which caused paranoia about communist subversion in the United States, Oppenheimer's opposition to the bomb was taken by many as a sign of loyalty to the Soviet Union.
As punishment for Oppenheimer's change of heart and his stand against the government's demands, Oppenheimer was secretly put on trial before a three-person personnel security board of the Atomic Energy Commission, or AEC, in 1953. Oppenheimer's prosecution was handled by an aggressive former criminal prosecutor, specially chosen for the case. The FBI tapped into his conversations with its lawyers and potential witnesses, and reported all information to the AEC. The board withheld evidence from him and his lawyers, and even lowered legal standards to help more easily prosecute Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer's Communist Party affiliations, specifically his brother, wife, and former fiancé, did not help in this trial of his loyalty to the country. In the end, the board uniformly determined that his loyalty was not in question. However, they chose to revoke his government security clearance because he failed to give enthusiastic support to the hydrogen bomb program, and determined that his influence among the scientific community was not beneficial to the interests and goals of the country. Oppenheimer's reputation among the scientific community was ruined by this public humiliation, especially because he had once been considered a hero of the war. In the end, the scientific community not only lost a very valuable member, but was coldly shown why no one should question the government or its motives.
Moreover, he ultimately did not make as large of a difference as he may have wished to. The hydrogen bomb project was still successful in spite of his efforts, and the race to create more advanced weapons and gain more global influence was further heightened in the continuation of the Cold War. The world became a darker place as 7 other countries around the world developed weapons of their own. However, Oppenheimer's stand was one of the first in a long series of actions that have led the world to become more conscious about tools of mass destruction. This was especially apparent in the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963 and the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons in 1968, that respectively banned all above-ground nuclear tests and stated that countries with nuclear arms would not help other countries gain this power. However, these treaties have only somewhat mitigated the disastrous effect of the atomic bombs, and there continue to be nuclear tensions prevalent around the globe.
Oppenheimer's story and the development of the atomic bomb leaves us with several questions for the current and future state of the world. Can we truly be safe if there continue to be any atomic bombs in existence? Can the countries of the world continue to possess these weapons while knowing their potential to murder millions of innocent people? By that token, will the lives lost in Hiroshima and Nagasaki be wasted in vain? Was it justified that the US government dropped the bombs since it meant putting an end to the fighting and bloodshed of World War II? While consensus for the answers to these questions will be difficult to achieve, and consequently, these questions may very well remain unanswered for quite some time, it is important that we come together, based on the collective humanity that the people of the world share, and take measures to ensure that the excessive killing and destruction that pervades us does not continue.
He says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.